Let me start off by giving you a bit of background on Belbin team roles. Many years ago, Meredith Belbin and his colleagues, they started studying teams, and particularly they addressed the question, what makes one team more effective than another team? Now they would set up experiments with small groups of people of similar profile, for example, people on middle management level, and they would divide them into small groups of 10 people in a group, and then they would have them compete in an activity. Some of the experiments had activities like Monopoly, where they would make decisions and take risks, and there was strategy involved, and so on. And in the end, they could come up with a ranking of the particular team that was first and second, and so on. Now, then they looked at the winning teams and the losing teams, and what was the difference between these teams, and try to understand why is one team more effective than another team. Now, what they soon discovered was that intelligence is not the main factor that makes the difference. And so, but then if that's not the biggest factor, what are the biggest factors contributing to success or failure of teams? And gradually they developed the idea that in a team, if you have a combination of certain informal roles, that team has a better chance of outperforming another team. And these then they would cluster behaviors and put names to these types of behavior, or the clusters of behaviors, and gradually they developed the theory of informal team roles and how that contributes to the success of a team. Now, when we talk here about team role, we distinguish between functional team roles and informal team roles. Functional team roles are the role that is assigned to you by the organization or by the company. You are all in a job that has a name, and that name is your functional team role. So you are an IT manager or a project manager or whatever. But what we are here talking about are the informal roles. So in a team, you would have your functional role, but you would also have an informal role. And both are important for the functioning of a team. If there is not good clarity on the formal team roles, the team would most definitely be less effective, because there would be overlap or confusion, or there would be certain areas of the work that's not covered. And the informal roles are important because it has to do how well the team actually works together as a team. Now, you have all completed the Belbin team role as an inventory, and that gives you an indication of what is your preferred team role. A team role is a tendency to behave, contribute, and interrelate with others in a particular way when working in a team. We can also say it is your preferred way of interacting or contributing in a team, regardless of your formal role. Now, what Belbin's research showed, or what they found, was that if there's a good combination, or if all 8 or 9 areas of contribution or team roles were covered, then that team had a higher predictability for success and high performance. Initially they had the 8 roles, and later on they added the specialist as a 9th role, but it is still debatable whether the specialist is a formal or an informal role. We only cover the 8 roles. And then just to emphasize that we must distinguish between the informal and your functional role. That's your formal role, which is then description of the job demands. You will notice that in the slides, in the theory, there's the description of the role, but then there's also allowable weakness. But what is the allowable weakness? We can say this is the price to be paid for being good in your preferred role. So, for example, if you are a strong shaper, Shapers can at times be quite opinionated, and therefore they can hurt other people. So they have strong ideas and what should be happening, but when they do that and how they do that can be quite hurtful, and they can forge their way ahead, which would then be a little bit of a downside or the allowable weakness of their particular role. Now, it is important, if you read through the roles, and you particularly your own role, that you take a look at the allowable weakness, and you try and prevent it from becoming allowable weakness. I mentioned here's one example. A plant, they can easily lose their attention. Now that can sometimes be okay, because they're thinking about what should be happening, and they are thinking, for example, of creating solutions, and that would be okay. But they cannot be absent-minded or present in the meeting, but they actually absent because their minds are outside the meeting. That would not be really an allowable weakness. Here we have a summary of all the roles, but you do have it in the PDF files in your course material. You will see that there's, for each role, there are the green are the 8 team roles that Belbin and his colleagues that have distinguished, and the light blue is then the activity or the central aspect that characterizes that particular role. For the resource investigator, it's collate, that's to gather, so they gather information, they know what's going on. The plant is the generate, the ones that comes up with ideas. The shaper is the one that usually promotes those ideas, so it makes it a little bit more practical and understandable, and start working towards implementing the ideas. The monitor evaluator, they are particularly good with planning, and that comes easily for them. The coordinator is the one that organizes. They're calm, they're trusting, they're impartial, they can allocate roles and so on. The implementer is the one that produces. Don't ask too many questions, but they can put their head down, and they can work and complete the work. Then the completer finisher is in particular the person who is good at controlling, quite perfectionistic, good at paying attention to detail, and to finish and complete tasks. The team worker is the person that's usually very aware of what's going on in the team, and on the social side of things contribute to the team performance. Okay, this slide gives you an indication of how the roles could be clustered. We have the action-oriented people. They are the implementers, completer, finishers, and shapers. And then you have the people-oriented in these 3 roles, and the problem-solving oriented people, monitor, evaluator, and the plant. Why we cluster them in these 3 categories is just to make it easier when you use it in a team. Now, the Belbin is the ideal instrument where you give it to all the team members, and you would discuss and work with it in the team, so that that you can have a better understanding for each other. Why people behave in a certain way, and how they also contribute to the team. And through that understanding, one can improve the functioning of the team. Good luck with thinking about and also using the Belbin team roles in your own teams.